This is a review of Digimon World 2 for the Sony PlayStation. As it's a sequel, I'll be drawing parallels to the former entry in the series, Digimon World. I highly recommend you watch my Digimon World review before this one, as it's the optimal viewing experience. I'll put this little annotation here to make it easier for you, and if you click that, it'll take you to my review of Digimon World. Alright, that's enough time. Welcome, valued viewer and Jack Bros fans of the world, to my review of Digimon World 2. Let's jump right in with the opening cinematic. You're immediately shown an FMV sequence that doesn't represent the game at all. It looks like a scene that would be more at home in a game like Five Nights at Freddy's. It clearly shows shots of vast, sprawling environments, which the original Digimon World was known for. Then it cuts to a fast-paced battle between some extremely powerful Digimon and ends on another staticky sequence. Upon seeing this, my expectations grew to unfathomable heights. Unfortunately, the second the game started, those expectations were trampled harder than a baby in a mosh pit. We open with some slow-moving, blocky models that looked like they were ripped straight from Final Fantasy VII, with dialogue to match. Then, we're given the chance to name our character. I attempted to name him Hashubatsu Desuwa after the protagonist from the first game, but since the character limit's 5, let's just call him Brad. You'll soon learn that Brad is a trainee Digimon tamer who lives in a colony with other tamers. It's his last mission as a trainee, and upon successful completion, he is to join one of 3 factions in his quest to protect the colony from wild Digimon. This is a drastic shift in tone and setting from Digimon World. The previous game saw you explore an open world with a Digimon companion. Bonds were formed and attempts at progress were made as you juggled its basic needs. There was minimal exposition, a vague goal, and some questionable design choices, but it felt like you were on an adventure. Digimon World 2 does away with all of that unique nonsense and replaces the world with a bunch of buildings that look and feel exactly the same. The rooms are full of uninteresting NPCs who ultimately serve to slow down the pacing. They move at snail's pace in cutscenes, rarely have anything of worth to say, and go as far as to physically get in your way. As if that wasn't bad enough, the world map is just a static image with icons covering it. It's effectively a select screen. After finishing the tutorial, you'll be able to choose one of the aforementioned factions to work for. You're instructed to travel to each of the 3 faction areas and talk with the respective leaders about what ideals they represent. The funny thing is, they all say the same thing and simply phrase it differently. On top of that, the only distinguishing features between the buildings are a handful of NPCs and a logo. All of the areas that aren't dungeons consist of a plane and a pre-rendered background. The texture work on the plane didn't scale too well, but the pre-rendered sections look much nicer than the previous game, even at higher resolutions. As for the dungeons, they're so basic and uncreative. While the patterns on the walls and floor occasionally change, the core design never shifts from bland linear paths and empty square rooms. The map design in the original Digimon World may have suffered from a lot of issues, but it was a joy to explore and had enough variety to keep the player interested. Digimon World 2 lacks that entirely. Unfortunately, the gameplay also changed quite drastically, and a lot of things were sacrificed in the process. This time around, caring for Digimon has been completely removed in favour of a standard leveling system. Digivolving now happens manually, and de-evolution has been introduced in the form of data digivolution. This left a sour taste in my mouth, as Digimon management demanded improvement and innovation, not a complete removal. The advantages to this new system, and I say new with air quotes, is that it's much easier to gauge progress. Once you get a certain amount of experience, you'll grow to a higher level. Higher levels mean higher numbers, and unlike the first game, all of the counters are on display. There's no invisible poop counter and no need to document feeding patterns. It's comfortable, but at the same time, it removes all of the intrigue that the original was oozing with. Being crammed into levels that all feel the same hinders that sense of progression. It never feels like you're getting anywhere because the later levels still feel like the very first. There is a lot that can be done with this style of dungeon crawler, but the main issue here was the uninspired copy-paste level design. Much like the rest of the game, traversing the dungeons is a chore. You man an upgradable tank for some reason and use it to bypass obstacles and interact with wild Digimon. The tank comes equipped with stats of its own, because why the fuck not? Early in the game, these arbitrary numbers will halt large amounts of progression and literally stop you dead in your tracks. You have this stat called EP, and it decreases by 1 for every step you take. Once expended, you'll be promptly removed from the dungeon and charged a fee for repairs. I did this a handful of times until I realised that you have the option to escape before your EP runs out, which avoids the fee. On top of that EP business, there are mines and traps that are activated when you step on them, and they come with some interesting effects. Some deal damage to your tank's health, and upon your health hitting 0, you'll be penalised in the same way as if your EP runs out. Other mines might destroy your radar, turning the map entirely black for the remainder of the dungeon. Others will render you unable to move, or consume multiple EP per step. However, you can detect and destroy them with a combination of a mine searching upgrade and a missile shooter. This seems like a really cool idea until you realize that each type of mine and trap has a specific ammo type to destroy it. So on top of having extremely limited inventory space, you must also pay for individual ammo and take a guess at what type of ammo you'll need for a particular dungeon. All of these arbitrary numbers, coupled with the blatant guessing games you're forced to play, serve as a content gate. It's not challenging because most of the dungeons are so short that resource management isn't necessary. It really just serves to block unsuspecting players and unfairly lengthen this clusterfuck of a game. When moving to a square adjacent to that of a wild Digimon, a battle will ensue. The battles consist of the same generic turn-based combat you've seen in literally every other game ever. Sorry, that line was written by someone else. You charge into battle with up to 3 active Digimon and are confronted by a force of up to 3 wild Digimon. Each monster has a set of attacks, and each move costs MP. This ties back into resource management, as spending too long in dungeons will see you unable to afford attacks. Defending in battle or leveling up will recover your MP. The former will see it regenerate in increments, whereas the latter will restore it entirely. With the way Data Digivolution works, you level up so frequently that you rarely run out of MP. So much for interesting resource management. The speed of battles is crippling and is one of the major faults of the game, alongside the horrendous level design. There's no option to speed it up, and this is not a small issue. It's not even tolerably slow like Pokemon or old Final Fantasy games, it's actually unbearable. As someone who plays turn-based JRPGs more than any other genre, I cannot stand it. If you're someone who drinks 18 coffees an hour, like myself, it might suit you more, as once you punch in your commands, you can easily make a smooth brew in the time it takes to execute. Before every attack is a 2-second wind-up period. Then, a full attack animation executes, and then there's a 1-second cooldown after that. Multiply this by 6 for a maximum capacity battle, and you'll have jitters from all that caffeine. Speaking of maximum capacity, during battles of 4 or more Digimon, the frames drop faster than your bottom jaw at the slightest hint of cock. Throughout a majority of Digimon World 2, the frame rate is an acceptable 30. With 4 Digimon on the field, the frame rate is a solid 25. With 5 monsters, it sits at a whopping 20, and with 6 chaps engaged in a bout of fisticuffs, it tanks to a disgusting 15 frames per second. It's much more noticeable when it's bouncing between 15 and 30. They should have done as most JRPGs of the time did, and kept battles at whatever the hardware could handle. I mean, the human eye can't see past 30 frames. With all that said, it's nice to be able to give your Digimon commands and have them actually do what you say. When you begin the game, you'll be given a starter Digimon. To acquire more, you'll have to do this ass-backwards mating ritual, which is as follows. Buy an item that corresponds to the Digimon type. After purchasing it, manually move it to your inventory. Find the correct type of Digimon. There is Data, Virus, and Vaccine, and they each have unique recruiting items. Press Square, a button that isn't used in any form prior. Use the item until there's a big pink heart above their head. Beat the absolute fuck out of them. Accept their offer to join, and finally, have autism. If you charm the pants off a Digimon on screen and there are multiple Digimon in the battle, the one you dispatch last will be the one recruited. This is some of the most obtuse shit I've ever seen in a video game. I had to fucking Google this. Once you actually capture some fucking Digimon and they start leveling up, you'll notice a few things. The first is that you're given the option to manually digivolve them to a higher form. With a rookie Digimon, you'll have Champion, Ultimate, and Mega forms available at levels 11, 21, and 31 respectively. There are no baby or in-training forms in this game. I know they didn't add much in the first game, and cutting them was a smart decision, but it feels lacking. This is a personal gripe more than anything, but the removal of these 2 stages make it feel significantly less like Digimon. The second thing is that at a certain level, Digimon stop leveling up. I think this has something to do with a stat called DP, but I can't be sure. When you're cooking with a champion or higher and can't level it anymore, you can take 2 of the same stage Digimon and Data Digivolve them. They'll revert back to a level 1 rookie, but with higher base stats, more battle techniques, and in some cases a higher DP, which I think means they can gain more overall experience and level higher. This is a good idea in theory, but serves as another content gate. To get past a certain stage and to be strong enough to take on later dungeons, you'll be training a lot of Digimon and melting them down into tougher fighting machines. It's blatant grinding and a clear attempt to pad the game further. With a bit of minor tweaking, this could have been a strong element to the game, but it's simply not. It's astounding how the developers tried to move away from grinding in the first game and ended up in the exact same spot, just with a slightly different coat of paint. The sound is a mixed bag. Some of it has that Digimon sound, that is heavy bass, metallic noises, hard synths, all that jazz. Then there are some tracks that sound like something 3 Japanese girls should be dancing in time to. A handful of these tracks could even stand among the greats, such as Suikoden, Breath of Fire, and Final Fantasy. I wanted Digimon World 2 to take what the first game attempted and refine it to be something spectacular. There was so much room for improvement and innovation, but instead we got this slow, bland shit. The worst part is, the foundation is solid. If it just had a bit more polish, it could have been exceptionally fun of its own accord, but it didn't, and it wasn't. This isn't Digimon World. This is an abomination. Maybe redigitalize will be what I'm looking for. Fuck you, Brad.